Okay. Functional analysis. Now, see the 4 things under that. Attention, escape and demand, get something tangible, automatic. Those are the 4 possible reinforcers for any of these behaviors. Right? So I've got a kid that, is pulling her hair out little by little. She's half bald back here, because she just does this constantly. Or I got a kid that bangs his head on the tables. Okay. These are my 4 choices for why are they doing it, what's the reinforcer. First one is attention. Oh, when he does that, I'll stop making dinner, I'll go over and I'll just play to wait till he calms down, and then I'll go back to making dinner. Okay, so it could be attention. The next one is to get out of a request. When I asked him to pick up his toys, or I asked him to put on his shoes, well, he just starts hitting himself, and so I usually just put on his shoes for him. Or I'll just let him calm down and I'll pick up his toys for him. See how it's like, oh, I don't have to pick up my toys. Okay, so get out of something. To get something tangible, tangible means you can hold it, see it, it's an object, a thing. So that's to get a toy, to get coloring. We'll consider anything the kid gets, like a video, a snack, if the behavior is followed by, oh, here, play with this, or here, do you want something to eat, or, I'm giving you something, that would be tangible. The last one, it's called automatic, but you should in your notes write intrinsic reinforcement. What that means is the behavior itself, we think of intrinsic reinforcement as what? It's things we enjoy doing. For the behavior itself is reinforcing, right? So if there's certain things you like to do, you like to play video games, you like to, play sports, you like to dance, you just enjoy doing it. That's what we're talking about for this. Now it seems a little bit weird to think banging your head on the table is intrinsically reinforcing, but you got to remember, for a lot of these kids, their sensation is quite different from what yours would be if you were banging your head on the table. Or somebody that scratches themselves to the point where they're bleeding, they might not feel, it doesn't produce pain for them necessarily, but they like the sensation of that. That would be an automatic reinforcer. There's also a couple of papers out where they thought maybe it's automatic reinforcing. What's the other thing when pain is induced? What do our bodies do in response to pain? Endorphin release. Okay, the runner's high thing. So sometimes if your body's physically stressed, your brain releases endorphins. You get an endorphin rush. I've heard of this. I've never experienced this when I've ever run anywhere. I don't know. It seems a little strange, but maybe some of you say, oh, yeah, I feel great when I'm exhausted. That can happen too. And there were 2 case studies where they thought maybe this was the reinforcer. So they gave them, endorphins are endogenous opiates. So they gave them an endorphin blocker, or an endorphin antagonist. So the drug would block the endorphins from binding to their receptors, and the behavior stopped. So it was very good evidence that that was the reinforcer for those 2 cases, those kids. Now, that's a little bit more rare, thank goodness, because how do you remove an intrinsic reinforcer? You can't, right? I mean, if it's something the person just likes, the sensation, I can't remove the sensation, so that's a really difficult one. It's also kind of by default, you rule out the other ones, and if you found it's not those, you're kind of left with, well, shoot, I guess it's all that one, and that's the hardest one to treat. But again, fortunately, it's unusual. All right, now the actual functional analysis session. Okay, this is the kind of weird part that I wish I had a video. Maybe I'll have to create one somehow. But I want you to understand how they run these sessions and take data and the logic behind them. So, all right, so at these these few clinics that do this approach, what you have is basically a small room, maybe 10 by 6 square feet, okay? Padded walls, ceiling, a big one-way mirror, and maybe a table, a chair. It depends on the session. Okay. Now, one or two therapists. That's what I was saying, like bachelor level psychology majors who might want to go on to clinical psych, who are being paid for this, will come in with the client and they'll run, there's 5 kinds of sessions they run. Okay. So they run a session for each of the possible reinforcers. They're testing for these reinforcers, and then there's this control session we'll talk about. So in this session, let's say we're going to do the tangible session, okay? And the whole goal is to figure out, is getting something, is like getting a particular toy, the reason the behavior is happening. Is that the reinforcer for the behavior? So what I'm going to do during the session is I'm going to actually use a tangible reinforcer, and whenever I see the behavior, I'm going to give that kid, I'm going to reinforce that kid with something tangible. It's like a toy that he likes. Now, so we're sitting in here, these sessions run for about 10 minutes. There's people on the other side watching. They've got a laptop, they've got a timer, it might be 1 or 2 people. And so somebody's taking data on every time the behavior occurs, because we want to see the rate of the behavior during these sessions. How much does it happen? So let's say I have the kid sitting here at a chair and a table, and his reinforcer is going to be a little sparkly toy that he likes to play with. And so we come in, they tell, they kind of tap on the glass like the session's starting, they're starting the timer. And he's just going to sit there, and he's not going to get anything, he's just sitting there, okay? I'm not talking to him, I'm not paying attention to him, just kid sitting there, I'm sitting here waiting, and I have the little toy kind of hidden. Let's say his behavior is to kind of hit his head, like we saw in the video. I sit and wait. As soon as that kid starts hitting his head, I go, hey, Johnny, you want your toy? Why don't you play with that a little bit? I specifically reinforce the behavior with the toy, with something tangible. He gets to play with it a little bit. They kind of knock on the glass most time and go, okay, we're going to put that away, and then I wait. Now, as soon as he starts hitting his head, if he does, I go, here, Johnny, why don't you play with your little toy? I'm reinforcing him with this toy for hitting his head. Now, the whole point of doing this is I suspect, or I know, that if, when he's at home, this is why he does the behavior, to get stuff, then he knows the drill, and he's going to do the behavior a ton during these 10 minutes. Because that's what he's always used it for. And so we're going to play this little game, and if he never hits his head, I'll just stand here with the toy. They'll do, you usually get some kind of little rate of the behavior. But what I'm interested in, does it happen a lot? Because that's the one rule in here. If you do it, you get your toy. And if that is why he's been doing this for 3 years, he's going to do it a lot. He knows the drill. If, on the other hand, he's always used this behavior to do something else, like get mom's attention, then I'm not going to see very much during this tangible session. Okay, so they're taking data. We do this for about 10 minutes. We're done. Okay, let's go. We'll do something else now. All right, now in the demand session, I'm going to specifically reinforce the behavior by letting him out of a demand. So I'm going to make some kind of request. Usually they'll do things like, okay, we're going to work on this worksheet. I want you to circle put a circle around all the triangles on this sheet, all the green triangles. Let's do some schoolwork here. And if they're not moving at first, I might have to do a full prompt. I take their hand and I'm going to start helping them circle. And if he starts doing his behavior, I'll go, that's okay, let's take a break. We'll do it later. So I specifically let him out of that request. That's his reinforcer. 30 seconds goes by. Okay, let's do our worksheet now. Come here. We're going to look at all those green triangles. Can you point to them for me? He starts hitting his head. I go, oh, that's okay. We'll do it later. All right, again, the same logic. If he's used the behavior to get out of stuff, to get out of requests, he's going to do it a heck of a lot right now because that's all I'm doing is making requests. They might do other things. I've seen sessions where they ask somebody to, kid to put on his socks, put on his shoes. And if he starts doing the behavior, that's okay, we'll do it later. We'll take a break. Yeah?
But if you're sitting there reinforcing it, couldn't the kid just then at that point, learn and understand that that's what he has to do?
You start doing it for that. That is a risk. That's why they do short sessions. Because you're talking about a behavior that's had years to develop. And so, and they alternate the sessions, and you do have to keep that in mind. It's a good point. But as you'll see, usually the data work out that it's okay, but it is a risk. Okay. What do you think they do in the attention session? Anybody have a guess of what I'm going to do? Now I'm running an attention session.
You ignore him, and when he starts hitting himself, you pay attention, talk to him, whatever. And then
Exactly. We sit down and I completely ignore him. It's kind of funny to watch. I've seen therapists where they just stand in the corner of the room, and then the kids start to say, "Oh, hey, how you doing? It's good to see you today." Da, da, da. Okay, I gotta go now. And they just stand here, or they'll bring a magazine and just like put it up to their face, pretend they're reading. But just no social interaction is until the behavior begins. And I'll give you all you want for about 20 seconds, and I'll take it away. Okay. All right. Automatic or alone? Just the kid sitting in the chair by himself in the room, no therapist. So there's no one there to give you attention. There's no demands being made on you. There's no one there to give you stuff, tangible things. So if those 3 reasons, or one of those 3 reasons, is why you do this behavior, am I going to see the behavior much during the 10-minute session when you're sitting there by yourself? What do you think? Will I see much behavior? Not if you're going for attention, tangible, or escaping a demand. If that's the reinforcer and you're in a room all by yourself, you're just going to kind of sit there. You're not going to do much because you can't get those things. On the other hand, if I have a kid sitting by themselves in a room for 10 minutes and I'm seeing a lot of this, I'm starting to think, maybe he just likes doing that. Maybe it's intrinsically reinforcing, what we would call automatic. Now again, the first time you run the session, well, maybe they're just kind of trying it. Well, isn't anyone going to come in here, kind of thing. I got nothing to do. But if I'm going to run 8 to 10 sessions like this sprinkled over 2 to 3 weeks, eventually, if automatic is not the reinforcer, eventually they're going to get to where they just kind of sit there and wait, and nothing happens. All right, last session, toy play control. This is slightly redundant, but what they do in this one, and this is kind of a funny one because anyone who is absent today, or maybe didn't watch the video, puts down the funniest things on the exams when they say, there'll be a question like, what happens during the toy play control session? And they'll be like, oh, well, you control their toys and then they can't get to them and you let them play. It's really hilarious. But you're here today, or you're watching, so you'll get this. During the toy play control, basically I give you everything you could possibly want. You have my attention, you've got your sparkly toy, I don't make any demands on you. Okay? So if you look on the first 3 things, they're already taken care of. You don't have to work to get stuff, you don't have to work to get my attention, you don't have to work to get out of a request. Okay. So, here's a little quiz. If we're doing toy play control, got everything you need, and I see a whole bunch of that behavior going on anyway, what do I think the reinforcer might be? The intrinsic automatic. It's like, well, the top 3 are taken care of. You don't need to do the behavior to get the first 3 reinforcers. So why are you doing the behavior now? Maybe you just like how it feels, or maybe there's, endorphin rush, maybe something. So if one of the first 3 things, let's say if attention is the reinforcer, and we're in the toy play control session, should I see high rates of behavior or low rates of behavior? Think about it. It's if attention is your reinforcer, and we're running a toy play control session, do you expect to see high rates or low rates of behavior? Low rates, because you already have my attention. You don't have to work for it. So all right. So this last one kind of reinforces your diagnosis. If you think it's one of the first 3, you're going to see low rates in the control session. If you think automatic is a reinforcer, you'll still see some moderate or high rates. Okay, so let's look at some